Hello, my name is Avin Zarles, and today I'm going to teach you how you can check your existing Kubernetes deployments for ARM compatibility using a utility called KubeArchInspect. This video is based off of the migrating containers to ARM using KubeArchInspect learning path that you can find and follow along with on the ARM Developer Hub. To follow along with this tutorial, you're going to need an existing Kubernetes deployment that you can connect to via kubectl. That is going to be the cluster that we're going to check compatibility with after all. And in that environment that you have kubectl access, we're going to need to download the KubeArchInspect project from GitHub. If you cannot connect directly to GitHub from that environment, you'll need to download those files and get them onto that environment by some other means in order to be able to run this utility. So what is KubeArchInspect and why would you want to use it? Well, if you have an existing Kubernetes deployment and you're not sure if all of your clusters will be compatible with ARM architecture, you can run this utility to automatically check all the source registry for your images and make sure that there is an ARM64 version available. This is a great first step for migration because it is a quick check that you can run on a live cluster without disrupting everything to get a sense for what areas you'll need to look into in order to migrate to ARM architecture. To install KubeArchInspect, you just have to download the release version from the GitHub project. You can go to github.com/arm-developer-ecosystem/KubeArchInspect and download it directly there from the website, or you can use something like wget pointing to the URL for the specific release and operating system that you need to be able to download it directly into your environment. You could also clone the entire repository and compile it as well if that is more your style for any reason. Whatever the case is, once you get a release file, you can then extract it to whatever folder works for you and run it then and there. As long as that development environment has kubectl connected to an existing Kubernetes cluster, then the tool should work. When you run KubeArchInspect with the images command, it will then connect with kubectl to your Kubernetes cluster and go through every single node and check the source registry to see if there is an ARM64 compatible version out of the box for that. As you can see here, when I ran this on my locally running cluster that's already running on an ARM machine, I get green checkboxes. This ran for me in like a second because it's a very small example cluster. Yours might take a minute to go through and check for that compatibility, but at the end you will get a list very similar to this that gives you a bit of direction towards ARM64 compatibility in your existing Kubernetes cluster. Let's talk about the different results and what they mean. If you get a green checkbox, that means you are good to go. They found in the source registry ARM64 support with the version that you're currently running. You should have no issues migrating. If you get an upwards arrow, that means that there's a newer version in the source registry that does have ARM64 support, but just not the version that you're currently running. So to migrate, you'll have to update that particular version number to one that is ARM64 compatible. But in theory, once you do, things should then work just fine. Now, if you get a red exclamation point, don't panic. That doesn't necessarily mean that something is incompatible, but there was some kind of error with the tool while it's checking. Often that it can be some type of connection issue from the tool to the image registry. You will need to look into that particular one manually or fix whatever connection issues might be causing the problem in order for the tool to properly suss out the ARM64 support. And lastly, if you do get that red X that indicates that there isn't ARM64 support, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be able to migrate to ARM. There might be alternative images out there, either officially for a different source registry, or potentially some other fork or some other equivalent version that is posted elsewhere that might have the support you need for whatever node that you're running. And even if that's not the case, where you have something that is just does not have ARM support at this time, that's a really great indication for you to maybe go to that project's GitHub page or open up an issue and request ARM support. It might be relatively easy for that project to update itself and add support if you work with the developers. Or if it's not, you can identify what the issues might be and then help with that project to then make it compatible, which will then make it a green checkbox for yourself and everyone else in the future who wants to use it. If you would like to get more tutorials like this, I would highly encourage you to join the ARM Developer Program. We have learning paths on all sorts of subjects, including many around Kubernetes in particular, that might help you with your experience. And right now, I would love it if you commented below and let me know about your migration experiences. What stuff did you run into? What issues actually were fine and relatively easy? I'd love to hear your stories, as well as if you have any other comments on other tutorials that you would like to see in this channel, or questions that you might have. Again, shoot us a comment, let us know, and I look forward to talking with you. Thank you very much for joining us today. See you next time.